Hi there. Getting to give a keynote at OSCON, sort of like throwing out the first pitch at the World Series for an open source guy. So I'm very happy to be here today. As Ed said, I work on open source at Citrix, and I work on a lot of cool projects. I spend a lot of time with the Linux Foundation, the Apache Software Foundation, working with people developing software. And I get to talk to a lot of smart people who know a lot about open source. And what I found is when I came to OSCON a few years ago, I felt like I knew a lot about open source. And I thought I knew more than I probably did. And I went to a talk, and that talk was given by Adam Jacob. And Adam is the founder of the Chef Project and OpsCode. And he gave a talk called Choose Your Own OSCON Adventure. And that sort of made me reflect on what I knew about open source and made me start to pay attention to the people as much as I did to the software. And in Adam's talk, he started talking about his license choice. And I assumed as a guy who started a company that was in business, he was going to tell me all about how Apache licensing was great for commercialization, and it was a great license for making money. And to my surprise, what he said was, I didn't choose Apache because it was commercially friendly. I chose Apache because it allowed more people to participate in my community. And all of a sudden, I realized what I thought I knew was not nearly enough, and I started paying attention to what the people that worked on open source software could teach me. So thanks to Adam for starting to make me pay attention. And today what I want to talk to you about isn't the software I develop or the software that you develop. I want to talk about how we include more people in our communities to make the software that we develop better and more useful to our users. So, one of my favorite people in open source is Martin Michos. You probably know him as the former CEO of MySQL. And he's pretty much like all of us. He's handsome, he's smart, he's rich after selling his company to his son. He has excellent personal hygiene. So he is pretty much like every one of us in this room. And if you can't tell, I do have a little bit of a geek crush on Martin. But in an interview he had with John O'Bacon in his Art of Community book, he talked about what open source communities look like. And in 95, 96, 97, they pretty much looked the same. You had a mailing list. You might have a website. For those of you over 30, you probably remember Usenet. That's how we used to have conversations. IRC was around. But what he said was that not every community needs to look the same. And the great thing I liked about his quote was he refactored an Eric S. Raymond quote on the Cathedral and the Bazaar and talked about the fact that sometimes you do have top-down development in open source. But the point was, just because you do it differently doesn't mean you do it better or worse. It's just different. This one is my personal favorite. And this is something I wish I could have told you I learned because I was studious in college, but I really understood a lot about game theory after I watched Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. So, full disclosure there. So I want to do a quick survey. How many people here use VMware for virtualization? Okay. How about Microsoft Hyper-V? You can put your hands up. There's no stormtroopers back there. It's cool. So, how many people here use Red Hat Linux? And keep your hands up, please. How many people here use Fedora Or CentOS, keep your hands up. How about Ubuntu? How about an Android device? Okay. How many people here benefit from collaborative Linux kernel development across all those products? That's cool. How many people benefit from collaborative development across Hyper-V and VMware? Okay. That one guy? Two guys? That's cool. Hey. My point is, and this is really inspired by Allison Randall, who was one of the former chairs, is that open source isn't a zero-sum game. All these people that work in Linux, benefit from shared development. It creates an ecosystem where some people may be using Ubuntu, some people may be using Fedora, some people may be using Red Hat, but those organizations can benefit on adding the most value in that last mile. Shared kernel development is awesome. If you work on Zen, you work on KVM, that's great. You both benefit by having development and upstream and QEMU. Next lesson I learned. Jordan Seisel, he is a hacker for DreamHost, and we all know hacker has a positive connotation. And at the Southern California Linux Expo this year, he made a great point. As people that develop software, I think we become very introspective on the way we develop software, and we don't do a great job of including our users. So he put it in the framework of a software developer. If a new user has a problem, it's a bug in your code or your documentation. End of story. If you think like that, you're including your users in your development process. You make better software, they get better experience, everybody wins. How many people here have read Carl Vogel's Producing Open Source Software? It should be a textbook they give you in college when you talk about software development, because open source is definitely the future. The thing I like about Carl is he said, hey, I wrote this book, 2005, it's getting a little dated. I want to update it, but my time is valuable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Kickstarter campaign. I'm going to write another version of the book. He did an excellent job of asking for help and defining a result that he would give us. I backed his Kickstarter campaign, as did Martin, as did a lot of other people, because he made it easy for me to do so. As you develop your software and participate in your projects, I think it's very important for you to consider how you ask for help. The easier it is for me to give time, money, other resources, the better. But I don't want to talk about software anymore, because this is a very personal thing for me. I couldn't be at OSCON last year because I was in the hospital. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. I didn't know if I ever would again. And what I realized was, in the software world, if I had a problem, I could refactor it, I could fork it, I could make things adapt to me. And I was sitting in my hospital bed, and I came across Jonathan's TED Talk, Sex TED Talk. And Jonathan is a war veteran who lost his arm in Iraq. And when he came back to the United States, they fitted him with a prosthesis that was patented in 1912. That is the standard for prosthetics in the world today. And it wasn't adapted to his needs. And he didn't have the option to adapt it to his needs because it was patented. So what he did was he came up with the Open Prosthetic Project. And Jonathan's an engineer. So he designed the prosthetic that he needed, and he made those plans open. And now other amputees have the option to adapt to their needs. That really hit home with me. And so I thought about it a lot. And what I came up with was, what we've done is amazing. As Jim Zemlin at the Linux Foundation says, the largest collaborative project in the world is Linux. Imagine if we took that collaboration and took it to other parts of society. We need to influence medical. Oh, can I have that last slide, please? The medical industry, our governments. We need to solve big problems in the same way that we solve big problems in software. We need to influence our peers in other industries and make a difference in the world. We've won. Open source is everywhere. Now it's time to take it to the next level and make the world a better place. So, I'm MR Hinkle. I work on open source at Citrix. Thanks for your time. Have a great OSCON.